my point of view, 7% is great when you compare with anybody else, but not enough for India. The challenge continues to be the close to 900 million people who still need government support to get food grain every month. We are not just going to be the youngest country, we are also going to be the oldest country in the world. At this moment, we are completely under-equipped for that. We cannot have so many people working on agriculture. Agriculture productivity has to increase, which sadly means people have to be taken off from agriculture. But if you take them off, then you have to provide other economic opportunities for them. Every one manufacturing job that you create, you also create 4 to 6 manufacturing-related services jobs. If you can teach the artisans to make products that you and I are buying, you can create over 100 million economic opportunities, sustainable economic opportunities, which no 5 or 10 industries put together can do. Our distinction will come from our being a responsible economic power, which has this very rich cultural heritage, where we can win an argument without having to fight. All of our strengths are also our challenges, and in our challenges also lie our opportunities.
Hey everyone, welcome to the India Story podcast. We are winding down there towards the end of 2025, and it's time to probably take stock of how we are actually doing on the India Story. The good, the bad, the ugly, what can be done to really accelerate change. Now, we've had many episodes of this podcast. Lots of suggestions have come on accelerating change from many of the experts. Now, great pleasure to welcome somebody who's one of the finest thinkers I know when it comes to India, how to accelerate the India story, and how to get things going. So the best person to talk to try and get a reality check of where we really are. Sunil Munjal, the chairman of Hero Enterprise. You've been talking about all the stuff that is good, that is bad, and what can be done. So it's a great pleasure to have you with us, Sunil. How is the India story doing?
I think we are at a very interesting place. If you look at the broad numbers, the averages, we are doing brilliantly well. Close to 7% growth when the rest of the world is growing at 2 or 3%, building massive amount of digital and physical infrastructure in one go. We built more metro train tracks in the last 10 years than we built in the 25 years before that. We built more highways and roads in the last 10 years than we built in the long time before that. We put in more fiber across this country than one could even have imagined when we started. That's the big pluses, building lots of infrastructure, new airports, new ports, etc.
And that used to be the major problem, right? Sometime back,
it used to be the big bottleneck, yes. So along with things like excessive red tape and corruption, the lack of physical infrastructure was one of the things India was seen holding India back. Clearly on that front, we are doing quite well. What still continues to be our challenge, and I presume we are talking of all the good and the not so good, as you said.
100%, because the idea is to accelerate change. So you will not be able to accelerate change unless you know what needs to be fixed.
The top of the economic pyramid in India is doing exceedingly well by any standard in the world. The challenge continues to be the close to 900 million people who still need government support to get food grain every month. The free of cost food grain that is being given by the government is actually no favor. It is something that it is actually required. These are people who have not had access to opportunities, skilling, training, economic opportunities. And that, I think, continues to be the single biggest challenge for us as a nation, is people. We talk of India becoming a developed nation, as we must aim for. I love, by the way, the targets that have been set out for India's, the aspirational targets, the growth targets, which is, I believe, the right way to point any institution, organization, or a nation in a direction to accelerate its pace of growth. But the challenge is also real. It is not an easy one because of the extreme diversity of India, both geographical diversity, income diversity, the cultural and the social diversity. All of our strengths are also our challenges, and in our challenges also lie our opportunities.
That's really well put. So, for example, how do you get people to keep on moving up the pyramid? Yep. How do you manage the demographics? Now, as you said, your challenges can be an opportunity or vice versa. So the people that we have, the 1.5 billion Indians, probably the greatest asset that you've got. The demographic dividend could be there. But if you don't scale them and utilize them properly, it could well be your biggest challenge also.
So let me give you two sides to the demographic dividend. And you rightly said, if you don't train, educate, skill this large number of young people, you could have a kind of pushback which would be hard to manage. We are seeing, little trailers of this happening around us. Look at what's happened in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, in Nepal, in Pakistan, literally around us, in our entire neighborhood. Our countries have suffered the pushback of the disadvantaged. I think that's where most of the political hotspots have got created. But in India, we have not just the opportunity to turn this into India's big strength, as we've seen in the last 30 or odd years, but we are also demographically going to be the oldest country in the world in the next very 7 to 8 to 10 years itself. That's something we never focus on. We are not just going to be the youngest country, we are also going to be the oldest country in the world, in the sense that there will be hardly any country on the planet which will have more people over the age of 60 than we will have in India. At this moment, we are completely under-equipped for that. I'm just opening up a new front that you've not asked, by the way.
That's actually an interesting statistic. I hadn't thought about that.
Yes, we don't.
So China would have a lot of elderly people, but you're saying because of the sheer numbers, right?
Exactly.
1.4 billion people,
Exactly.
you'll have a lot of people who are
you do
old
the
and you need
maths,
to worry about them.
Yes, if you do the maths, we are not too far from becoming the largest old country in the world as well. We used to talk of countries like Japan, etc., having elderly populations. We know China will, because they cut back sharply on new babies, and this has resulted, and this is going to result in a cliff fall off for their population, not just the elderly, but the total population as well. And that I think is going to be a problem for them. But for us, the elderly is an enormous resource base, but we need to understand how to channelize this, how to use this. At this moment, we have a retirement age varying from 58 to 62 in different institutions, organizations, different parts of the country. But we are not doing anything for them. Okay. If you go across the world, for the elderly, you have different clothes designed for them. You have different seats for them, different mobility which is suited for them. Even toilet seats are designed differently. Crockery and cutlery is designed differently with grips which are easier to hold if your hands are arthritic or not functioning so well. So I think there's an enormous, like we used to say, the opportunity that Professor Prahlad used to talk of at the bottom of the pyramid, we have one more at the top of our age pyramid.
That's a really interesting concept. Let's just come back to some of what you were saying are the challenges and what the right way to mitigate them are. You spoke obviously about the number of people who are still poor, and also how do you manage that demographic dividend. Let's just come to both of those in some detail. It can be said, when you're talking about the good part of the story, the fact is that India has been also really successful in driving down extreme poverty. The number
Phenomenally,
of people,
yes.
So the number of people who were in extreme poverty in India, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and to the number they are right now, has actually crashed a lot. What do you think were some of the factors that led to that?
I think it's a series of things that's happened. It's not just one thing. One is not only waiting for the trickle-down effect, as we used to talk about in the early days of reform. If the reform had worked at twice the speed that it did, if the acceleration was much, much faster, we probably could have benefited much more from the trickle-down effect. But people do not have the patience, and probably rightfully so, because they could see around them the quality of life of many changing. If you think back only 30 years ago, what was the standard of living of the middle class of India and the upper middle class of India and what it is today, it is a sea change of what's happened. This is not only an Indian phenomenon, incidentally, this is a global phenomenon.
And in a sense, it's good because it increases your aspiration.
Absolutely.
You're no longer satisfied saying, I have food to eat and water to drink.
Yes.
It's not good enough. I want, X, Y, Z, other things, clean air, other things.
Absolutely. So what happened was the market economy model that the world followed, and it was not only democracy, everybody started following it. The market economy was followed by, big communist countries like China. That raised all boats. But what it did do is the top raised much more than the bottom. So the gap grew. And the world was still getting away with it until the advent of digital technologies, communication, the internet, where everybody can see everything. There is no secrets left any longer in the world. So, how the very wealthy live, what they drive, their quality of their homes, what they wear, the watches they wear, the shoes they wear, all of that became visible, and it made the people who were left out of this economic miracle, it made them angry and upset. And that is what drove the shift to the extreme right across the globe, by the way. Politics is also responding to this. And if I bring it back closer home, we have been luckier than many, many, many countries.
And by the way, this is not just in poor countries. I mean, look at the United States. If you look at what is rolling itself out there, it's partly that the average person's standard of living has not gone up. They're seeing trillionaires rising.
Exactly.
Then you look for scapegoats. And in the countries like the US, they're blaming it on the immigrants. But you have to also look to see why the average person's standard of living has not gone up.
Yeah, so it's always easy to pick the soft targets. You know, it always happens. If there's a crash on the road, it always is a bigger vehicle which gets caught. In large countries, industries are soft targets, foreigners are soft targets. So there are some natural targets which get aimed at and become the bad boys. But if I come back closer home, India has done a miraculous thing by taking development to parts of India where poverty was coming from. If you do the maths, 65 to 67% of the population which lives in the rural areas, a large section of that depends on agriculture as a primary source of income. And agriculture over a period of time is providing less and less to the GDP, thereby directly contributing to poverty. We cannot have so many people working on agriculture. Agriculture productivity has to increase, which sadly means people have to be taken off from agriculture. But if you take them off, then you have to provide other economic opportunities for them. So we have an opportunity to create post-harvest economy. We have an opportunity to create a non-agri-rural economy. But what we have done, taking roads to rural areas, taking electricity to rural areas, taking digital connectivity, building toilets, taking water in pipes, providing gas.
Electricity.
It is and electricity. It is almost miraculous if you think about the change that has taken place in people's quality of life, and then providing them minimal support in terms of healthcare, insurance, in terms of 100 days of jobs, guaranteed jobs to one to each family. So this all put together is quite a massive task that has been undertaken and has raised people's aspirations as well, rightfully so.
So I just want to dwell on this a little bit further because if you think back, I used to do so many budget sessions with you and others 20, 25, 30 years ago, just after the reform started.
Yes.
And a lot of the things that were done to directly support the poor were often, oh, this is not good. This is a populist measure. This is vote gathering measures. This is not good for the Indian economy. It used to always be looked down at some extent. I must say, in my own mind also, as the years have gone on, I've also started to rethink that because in many ways, that is, if you're actually raising the lives of so many millions of people, okay, you're giving 800 million people free food, but if it's stamping out poverty across the country, why is that bad? What's wrong with it?
So, Vikram, if you see my old recordings, after the first year, when you correctly said, I was also one of those who said, we need to think of better ways. From year 2, and this is going back then, I have been saying it's a very good thing. We need to run a parallel track. The trickle down will never happen fast enough, or also may not have enough scale to benefit the large section of the population that we have in India, which needs that help and support, which is why direct benefit, providing direct facilities is actually the right thing to do, because each one also open up new economic opportunities. And that's what we need. We need to open the access to first skilling. We're not doing enough. Even today, we're not doing enough for skilling. While we're doing a lot more than we used to, we're still not doing enough.
Skilling, employment, rural opportunities, I'll just come to that entire bucket. You're right, because that's how you get the economic engine moving faster.
Correct.
But specifically on the question of, these are considered political sops, these are considered handouts, the money which is given to women, for example, in their bank accounts, or to farmers in their bank account. Hopefully the leakages are starting to come down, so that's better, it's not going into corruption.
Yes.
But do you think these are not bad things to do? It's
So
we think
I think they're not bad things to do. I think the challenge comes in terms of timing, how you position them, because if it becomes purely a political tool, that's when it becomes a political football as well.
Yeah.
But if you see in the overall scheme of things, it's actually it will be sensible to take a step back and look at the big picture. Because when you look at in a narrow slice, some of these seem distorted or distorting the economic landscape. But if you take a step back and look at the overall numbers that we have as a nation, as an economy, these are actually necessary accelerators. I feel they could be targeted better than they have been. Say, giving bicycles to young girls is magical. So, in the rural area, especially for the poor, bicycle equals freedom. It allows you to get up from your home and go to school. It allows somebody to go from home to use it as a vehicle for business. So it has many meanings. So these kind of giveaways are
toilets for girl children, something which I used to
ab-
campaign for very
absolutely.
aggressively.
Yeah.
Look at what has done for girls enrollment in schools. It's just
You know, we did
sounds like a small thing, but it has a major impact.
Yeah, we did some work at trying to create rural development, integrated rural development of villages. We did an experiment along with Naresh Trehan of Medanta, just behind the factory in Daruheda, what was then called Hero Honda. So we went there and we found that along with the other problems they had of clean water, people falling sick, etc., or lack of sanitation, was that many girls wouldn't go to school. They just wouldn't tell anyone the reason they're not going, but they just wouldn't go.
Yeah.
And the simple reason was there was no toilet there. So you're
Or no
absolutely right.
segregated toilet.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah,
were asked to use
yeah.
the same toilet that the boys were using,
Yeah.
and they were doing
Well, in
that.
that village, there wasn't any. But so you're absolutely right. Some of these things have a magical impact. But we have to keep an eye on the long-term goal, but focus on the day-to-day implementation. Because that's where we tend to slip up every now and then.
So let me put I don't know if it's a controversial thought, perhaps it is, but let me put a thought out there for you. A lot of people sometimes oppose all of these steps that are being taken to raise the levels of the poorest of the poor as, oh, we are returning to socialism, or we are returning to some sort of a socialistic society. You could argue that, well, okay, there's nothing wrong with doing these things to help the poor. What actually was holding India back was not socialistic policies alone, it was state socialism. It was an entire network of licenses and red tape and bureaucracy and therefore linked corruption. Those were the chains around India. You can cut those, and you still probably need to do a lot more to cut that. And then you will have even faster growth and even more money to directly give to the poor.
Absolutely no doubt.
And
But
would you
again,
agree with that thesis, by the way?
oh, yeah, absolutely. But I don't think we have to be careful to strike a balance. When you're saying give directly to the poor, you must give to the extent that it is beneficial, not only give. So there's no incentive for people to work. We have seen this in other countries. In Australia, there was a time when the unemployment benefit was more, so much that the people would sit back, drink beer, and they could own a car and own a home, only on unemployment benefit. So that is not smart. We must never allow ourselves to get to that position. You take away the incentive.
So to give enough to make sure that from extreme poverty is
Yep.
not there, no one's
Yes.
starving,
Yep.
but they have to still have an incentive to
Absolutely.
work.
The safety net is essential because you cannot allow human beings to live a standard which is below what is acceptable for humanity. That is just not okay. To that extent, absolutely. After that, it has to be targeted. How do you incentivize people to do more, become more efficient, become more productive, look for more things? So things like creating insurance if your entire crop goes down. That I think is fantastic and essential because you do not have any other source of income if a farmer loses a crop in one season. They do not have any other access. And they also do not have large savings to be able to depend on. So I think these kind of support systems I think are very good. But the driver for forward movement is what you said. Remove the shackles that still exist of red tape, excessive bureaucracy, we also have to be careful to figure out that it's not just a one-stop shop. It's not just a central government thing, because most of the action now is happening in the states. We need to figure out how to make the state competition positive, as it became about 20 years ago. How do you accelerate that? How do you make them more competitive in a positive way, to improve the infrastructure, to reduce unnecessary checks and form filling and inspector visits and things which are only bureaucratic, which are not actually value add.
So a few months ago on that theme, because I know this is a key theme that many people believe is the key to really driving India from 6% to 8% and maybe even higher
Because
growth.
by nature, Indians are entrepreneurial. You can go back in history. And by the way, our behavior, and it's not unique to India, our behavior is genetic. A lot of the stuff we do, even we do not realize why we do this, because we are an 10,000-year-old civilization. So a lot of that comes from that. So enterprise is not new for India. It is therefore necessary to harness that for growth, not to hold it back.
That's an interesting way that you put it, because if you think about it, why is India poor? Standard question, there's so much poverty in India. Why is India poor? India's poor because it was one of the richest countries in the world before the British came, was driven into a state of poverty. So it was held back. And you could argue that even after that, it was held back to some extent by an entire network of self-imposed shackles that need to be snapped.
Because we continued the same system. So please remember, the laws and rules and regulations which were made when the colonizers were here were made by a small minority trying to run a country which was against them. So everything was based on mistrust. The very basis is wrong for a country that's a democracy and a free country. So the first thing we ought to have done when we started writing our constitution, etc., in 47 to 50, was to turn all the regulations on their head, which is only now starting to happen. When we are saying, if I am signing a paper, I needed to have somebody else confirm that I am who I say I am. It doesn't make any sense. But if you think from a colonizer's point of view, it's perfectly normal. But for a free country like ours, a progressive free country, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, Manish Sabharwal said this to me a couple of weeks back, and I thought it was very great. He said that we have the system saying, who allowed you to do this? Who allowed you to do this economic activity? Why in a free country do you need somebody to allow you? Yes, you can say the following activities are prohibited. Fine, don't do X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
Don't commit fraud. Don't cheat somebody. But other than that, why do you need permission? Why do you need a license?
So I had occasion to work on multiple government committees and councils. The Kelkar committee, which did the indirect taxation, including GST. I was on the Narsimhan committee, which did all the financial sector, plus labor reform, skilling up. I worked on a number of them. In every one of them, we actually put this down. Please make all the rules, regulations, laws which are trust-based. You have to trust your own citizens. They are your own people. So that's a starting point. If you just tweak that and create negative lists rather than to do this, you must ask me. Just say exactly like as you said, these are 5 things you cannot do without clearance for A, B, C, D, and there should be a good reason for that. Otherwise, please go ahead and do things which are good for you, your family, your city, and for your nation. And you must encourage that.
And by the way, every time we've tried this, in taxation, for example, there has been a move towards more faceless, slightly more trust-based. Even they'd have nudge system of saying, are you sure you don't have a foreign bank account that you should be disclosing to us? The results have probably been slightly better than that very tough tax terrorism.
All of these have helped. See, you cannot have one without the other. There needs to be a system to say, if you don't do the right thing, then the regulatory system will come down quick, impartially and hard. But other than that, it will not stand in your way. Please go ahead and progress. Please go ahead and do more economic activity, more social activity, more cultural activity. We have all focused on economic activity and sciences. We are not even talking about the arts in the country. That is India's big strength, by the way. Our crafts, our arts, our artisanal skills. We have been the world leader. We need to think back a little bit about that.
So just to finish off the point on what is potentially happening, I remember having a conversation with you a few months ago and talking about the possibility that India often reforms in a crisis, right? And the fact that these tariffs and this, Trump tariffs have come, and
Yep.
now you're arguing with the United States. China is obviously not going to be a particularly benign power. It creates a circumstance where you say, stand on your own 2 feet, develop your internal strengths, and therefore fix the things that needed to be fixed, which includes reform.
Yep.
Do you genuinely think that that's what's happening around us right now?
So there are more than one aspect to this. One, the US doing what it is doing may have its own reasons, etc. But I think it is a great instigator of change. Even sleepy parts of Europe have started thinking about standing on their own feet. Okay, they had become so laid back. China has demonstrated that it will not take this lying down. They want to build more aggressively. And frankly, for India, it is an opportunity in more than one way. If less Indians get visas to go there, the amount of outstanding talent that is building parts of the US is phenomenal. And you know this, you've seen this in the technology area, in healthcare, in legal systems, in accounting, in space flight, in all areas. We have Indians who are either at the top or near the top of the ladder in every organization. So some of them are actively and actually looking at coming back to India or sending their children to India and bringing that knowledge resource here, bringing the connections to bear. And for us, I think it's a wake-up call that we can and we must do more. This move towards self-sustaining India to building our own capabilities, the Prime Minister had already announced some time back. I think that is getting more legs. People are beginning to believe that much, much more now. Earlier, some were saying it's only a slogan. India wants to stand up and be counted. And we ought to. But we should do this without becoming isolationist. We want to be part of the global value chain, but at the same time, we want to make sure the essential parts of the value chain are available to us, or we have them available and operational in our own domain, or at least in our own control.
So there will be two aspects to that. One is building the institutions that are training people, that are enabling people to have an atmosphere where they can come and they can work out here, which is part A.
Yep.
Part B is using this as an excuse almost to push through to the reforms that were required. Now we've seen change in GST, we've seen the labor codes being codified. There is talk about the GOBA committee coming up with other deregulation. So on the reform part, how confident are you that we are going to finally see that reform that we've been waiting for decades starting to kick off now?
See, one thing is clear, that every time we have done some reform, maybe 100% didn't work, but a significant portion did and moved us forward. So about the benefit of reform, I don't think anyone has any questions. Old habit of putting excessive regulations, checks on checks, and then saying, you come back to me, I am the government, you must come to me and ask me for clearance or permission. That is a very hard one to change. I'm hoping that with the new excitement with the growth that people are seeing, and there is excitement, by the way, it has fired up people's imagination about what you can do. I'll just tell you a little story. The other day, I was addressing a group of people in a small town, and a number of them raised their hands when I asked them to ask questions. They said, there's a big problem, this is not okay, this is not okay, things are not going well at all. So I said, can you tell me, is your standard of living better today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Without exception, 100% of them said yes. I said, what are we cribbing about? What you want, what your aspiration is today, is to do better than you did, okay? Which is a fantastic thing. That should be used as a positive driver of change, not a complaint forum. I think we need to just redirect that energy a little bit, because we have so much going for us.
You could be satisfied. There are people who could be satisfied with 2% growth, or you could be dissatisfied with 6% growth or 7% growth, which in a sense is good, because that means that you will probably grow that much faster. Your sense of how growth is happening, by the way, because I know some people say, look at the data, and is the data, are we really growing at 6%? Are we growing at 7%, 8%? What are the options? What are you picking up? Because you're more plugged in than just about anybody else I know.
We have between $690 to $700 billion of foreign exchange reserves. Enough for us to pay all our dues and still have more than many of the G20 countries, by the way, individually, what they have, barring 2 or 3 of them, we'll still have more than most. So we are in that position that we can now afford to experiment. We can afford to push ourselves. We need now to have sovereign wealth funds focusing on high quality research development both in India and globally. Therefore, technology must become our new tool, much more than it has been. We have been doing great stuff. We have better public infrastructure based on digital networks than any other country in the world, but we also need that. To your question, is 6% enough? I'm happy that we're doing 6%, but I'm unhappy that we're doing 6%. For a country like ours, it is not enough. We can be happy saying, so-and-so has got 3 or 4%, we are at 6%. Most countries in the world are growing at between 2 and 3%. The world is growing only at 2 to 3% this year. We'll grow at close to 7%, if not actual 7%. But if you look at our need, per capita income, or the per capita income at the lowest level is what we should be counting more than these averages. Averages hide more than they reveal. So from my point of view, 7% is great when you compare with anybody else, but not enough for India.
So in addition to the changes and the reforms, let's now come to some of the specific things.
Yep.
If you really want to get the economy going, employment going, and particularly harnessing what we all, I think, believe is a technological wave that is upon us, and it's going to continue. This wave is going to be there for a while.
Correct.
You need to build the education institution. It's something that you've been doing, right, from the schools, and I know you're on the board of just about every major educational institution in the country.
But I can tell you
starting from the schools to Munjal University to other things that you're a part of. How do you create that infrastructure?
So first, we've introduced a wonderful new education policy just a few years ago, but the implementation has still not taken place. Vikram, so for me, the exciting thing was when I saw that policy. We've done a fantastic job. We were given some of it to review, etc., and we looked at it, give our suggestions, that schools should focus on building values, building the ability for young children to be inquisitive, to explore the world, to figure out where their true strength lies, where their passion lies, so they can follow their dreams as their. If your passion can become your profession, there is no better path in life. And I believe the education system is what allows you to discover that and to build on that. So things like tinkering labs in schools are a must. Adventure sports are an absolute essential requirement. We must not teach kids only to cram. That becomes a weakness, not a strength, by the way. Today, every parent is pushing their kid to get 95 or 97% in the school pass-out grades. But is that what contributes to success in life? And that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Is it building values? We still have scams and scandals taking place. How do you improve the general value system of society? All of that has to come through education. Same in higher education. We must be more research focused. We must be more inquisitive. We must see how we can make a positive impact on society. So we are doing this through you're right, the BML Munjal University focuses very heavily on this, on an experiential curriculum, where students learn not just in theory in classes, but actually practicing, working in factories, working in workshops, working with law firms. We get not just academics teaching classes, we get practitioners from industry teaching classes as well. And I think that's essential. In all the schools that I'm involved with, we focus on three things essentially. Give equal importance to character building things like sports, adventure, collective activities as you do to the academic curriculum. And by the way,
I hope you're adding things like hygiene and litter and
absolutely.
Don't throw plastic.
Civic responsibility.
How do you conduct yourself in your...
It is civic responsibility is an essential part of our learning. Of course, first part of the learning must come from home, what we teach our own children. But the schools have a responsibility too. We need to implement that policy. We had recommended some time back to the government to create a GST type of council, taking all the education ministers of all states together, with the education minister of India being the head of this council for implementation of this policy. Otherwise, I'm afraid we will implement it, but the implementation will be patchy. You will create haves and have-nots in quality of education. And that would be a shame, especially having designed such a wonderful policy.
So one of the things that you were
One more.
Yeah.
We also need to focus on practical learning in our education, not focus only on books. The experiential learning part should start from school, should start from class 6, 7, 8, not later.
So that ties into the question of employment that I was going to speak to you about, because as we were saying a short while back, the need to keep everyone employed and to make sure everyone has gainful employment, they're not
Yes.
relying on dole, is going to be something that is going to be important. Perhaps even more if AI does come and start taking away a certain amount of jobs.
Which it will, by the way. We have to accept
Yeah.
that it is already here. It's not something in the far distant future, and we must not close our eyes to this fact.
AI will come, it will take jobs away. And as you were saying, a lot of people need to move from agriculture out to other things. So you're suddenly going to have the problem where 400, 500, 600 million people, you're suddenly scratching your head and saying, how do we employ all of them? They can't necessarily be given doles alone, and nor should they. You've got to find ways to employ them. Now, how does that happen? Is it skilling? Is it really pushing very fast on manufacturing to say, we have to become a manufacturing country, or other solutions?
So it's not any one thing, by the way. What you said, all of them have to be done, plus more. Let me give you a couple of examples. So one good thing about manufacturing is, and we don't often realize this, that every one manufacturing job that you create, you also create 4 to 6 manufacturing-related services jobs. Because any factory, any manufacturing facility will need transportation, logistics, food services, delivery services, stationery. So all of that is an add-on to any manufacturing job. So when we look at manufacturing jobs, we must look at the multiplier it is creating in the services as well. Services has become the backbone of the overall growth of our economy, which is fantastic. We must not lose that. But growing manufacturing is absolutely essential. And we need to grow it at every level. I want to bring one more part of manufacturing which we do not even talk about at all. Going back to the rural economy, the non-agri-rural economy. India had the biggest strength in the world in crafts. Our big exports for a long time, for millennia actually, in addition to spices, were textiles, woodwork, bell metals, jali work, stonework. We were the world's leaders. Those skills still exist, by the way, and most of them exist in the rural areas. So the good part is, the skill is still there. It is passed on generation to generation. But now the kids are saying, I want to go and become a sales girl or want to join a computer company. And the parents are saying, there's no work here, please go. If we can not just revive those, if we can contemporize those, if we can teach the artisans to make products that you and I are buying, functional art and decorative art, you can create over 100 million economic opportunities, sustainable economic opportunities, which no 5 or 10 industries put together can do. That's one big chunk sitting there untapped completely. And I believe it's doable because we've tested it. Our foundation has done about 100 projects now across the country, and it looks completely doable. Now, on the other hand, in industry, we have 3 different buckets. One is the top end of industries which can be globally competitive. We must encourage those. And as a country, by name, we must push those. When an American president or a French president or a Japanese come here, they will tell you, please buy aircraft from Boeing or buy so-and-so, nuclear devices from Arriva or whichever one is going on at that time. We don't even talk about our industry when our leaders go. And I think that has to change because this is our big strength. That is one top end. Second is the bottom end, which has lots and lots of employment possibility, but is suffering. Lots of manual labor. Those industries, we have to figure out a way to make them more efficient, more productive, so that they can not just survive, they can absorb large amounts of semi-skilled, unskilled, and skilled labor. Then there is a big fat middle, which is what the MSME kind of industry, which needs to get better linkages with large sector because large industry by themselves only create a few jobs. The jobs are created in their ecosystem, the entire universe they create. In the small, mid-sized, the big companies are experts in branding, distribution, logistics, design, R&D, etc. So we need to create this much better linkage in the entire system. And I think there's a real opportunity here right now.
That's another place where deregulation and opening up actually
Absolutely.
helps, because those are the companies that suffer
And the
the most.
foundation must come from research and innovation.
Yeah.
Clearly, on that front, we are not doing enough right now.
Yeah, I was that's. But again, hopefully there are some plans. I was doing
Yes.
a podcast with the principal scientific advisor. There seem to be ambitious plans to roll out in
Yes.
science and innovation and research, and we have to.
And all of us in industry have to wake up to the fact as well. Government has a role to play, but individual enterprise collectively has a much bigger role to play. And I think that people are beginning to realize now. It's early days. I hope we can accelerate the shift to not just copying design, but to creating design. So
We have 20% of the world's designer of computer chips out here. Why don't we have our own? Why don't we have our own brands? Is, I guess, a very major question that has to be answered. NVIDIA's chips are designed out here, and we still need, worrying about where to get semiconductors from.
Yeah.
I just want to move now away to taking up from one of the things that you were talking about, the handicraft, the arts part of it. This clearly is something that you are personally very, very passionate about and devoted to. Serendipity is, is here, and a lot is being done out there. Is it arts for art's sake? But also, as you said, if you keep the arts going, there's also massive economic benefits to it.
Oh, absolutely. So there is, again, art for art's sake is fine as it is. It is the heart and soul of any nation resides in its cultural underpinnings. We, as a civilization, were known to have the richest cultural heritage in the world, are known to have. But we need to take a step back and think about what we are doing with it. What have we done with our heritage? What have we done with our monuments? What have we done with our arts? We had truly the leadership across the globe. So one of the things we are trying through the Serendipity Arts Foundation, through Ludhiana Sanskritik Samagam, and through the new initiative we are setting up that we call The Bridge, is to make this part of everyday lives of ours, to allow people to enjoy life more. It enhances the quality of life. And by the way, there is art all around us. You just need to trigger those part of your genes which learn to recognize it, appreciate it more, get engaged more. Lots of people during COVID, by the way, did this. They joined classes for cookery or for painting or for sketching. And I thought it was a fantastic opportunity. And this is one thing I've been saying to all of my friends for many, many decades, that we have one lifetime and we have so many dimensions to ourselves as individual human beings. Let's enrich our lives by inducting more of this richness that is available to us. So our foundation's work is to open up access to the art. So what Serendipity Arts does in the festival that it does in Goa, which by the way is on in December and you must come, is from the 12th to the 21st of December this year. We will have artists from about 20 or 30 countries. We will have visitors from 50, 60, 70 countries. We have a daily footfall of 100,000 a day in Goa. We take over the entire city of Panjim. Yeah. And you cannot be in Panjim and not know.
It's quite an impact. If somebody has not attended that, you're in Panjim at that time, it is ubiquitous.
So the attempt there is to bring back India's old culture, which had no silos in art form. So one of the things we are focused on is removing silos between theater, music, dance, crafts, photography, food. We also look at food as an art form. This has been one of our big cultural strengths. We are trying to bring back the cultural strength that India had as a nation. I think that is why it is critical for us to reflect, and it allows, if you look at the most successful leaders world over, and this is through history, by the way, it's not one, it's always. There were always leaders who had left brain, right brain functioning. Always. The most successful leaders. And I think as a nation state, we need to make a big effort. So what we have done, for example, in Ludhiana, we've set up something called a STEAM house. We've been focused so long on STEM subjects, we've forgotten about the art. So STEAM is A for arts added in the STEM. Yeah. So the STEAM house teaches arts with technology, and technology to the arts students as well.
I'm so glad you're focusing on the arts, because, sometimes I think about this with AI coming and AGI coming and people saying, we always wanted a world where we should be doing the arts and AI does all the boring stuff, and not that AI is painting and doing arts while we are sort of, washing dishes and doing other stuff. So hopefully that focus on arts maybe we'll have the time to really focus on it more and more in 5, 6 years.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important and critical, because you talked of technology and AI more than once now, that we need to realize that AI is a very powerful tool. As long as we can make it a tool, we are going to be very well off. If it starts taking over your lives and starts deciding what you do, then you have to start getting concerned and worried. But at this moment, it is early days. I think if we are sensible and smart as a globe, this is a global community which needs to take note, is whatever are the necessary guardrails, regulations, systems that need to be put in place, should be put in place now. And the early advantage of AI as a tool needs to start demonstrating itself. And I think for a country like ours, which is trying to leapfrog a few generations of development, it is a very powerful tool that's made available. So we must use this and turn this into a positive power for good.
Yeah, and that those guardrails are important. They have to be international guardrails. The principal scientific advisor was telling me AGI is 3 years away, which sort of scared me a little bit, because if it's coming, we have no guardrails right now.
At this moment, yes. At this moment, because it's a commercial enterprise. Companies are falling over themselves to throw more billions of dollars at it, to say, this is the moat I've created. But the reality is there are tools available, there are systems available, which China has shown, which India is showing now, by the way. Focus on the application end. Don't throw trillions of dollars at it. You don't have to. Create small language modules, medium language modules. Focus on what you need for each separate application, or 10 applications at one time, rather than trying to have 10,000 applications at one time.
Right, as we start to wind down, just wanted to ask you one last question on what you were saying about the work that you're doing on arts and culture. India's story around the world, right, should have been based and can still be based on that cultural heritage that you're talking about. The fact that India has been the nursery of so much of world's influence is what people should be talking about. There's almost a concerted effort these days, if you go to social media, that India and the India story are painted at, oh, there's garbage and there's filthy roads and there's other stuff. Some of it justified when it comes to things like air pollution, some of it exaggerated. Getting that back into center stage also has economic benefits, because tourism and travel, one of the major areas where people can get employment.
It is the largest employer in the world, by the way. Please remember that. Not just in India. It is also the largest foreign exchange earner in the world. After, this big industry of defense, etc. These are massive sectors for employment, and they're enjoyable employment where everybody benefits. So soft power is something that India has as a latent power. We need to tap into that potential to turn that into kinetic energy for India's global relations. Because at this moment, for India to only focus on being a great economic power is good, but not enough. Our distinction will come from our being a responsible economic power, which has this very rich cultural heritage, where we can win an argument without having to fight, without using arms, through literally, because we have this skill coming from philosophy, coming from our Vedas, coming from our culture, coming from our music. We have a certain propensity to do things in a certain way, which we need to actually show to the world. We have shown things like yoga, people have taken to it, but the soft power that India has, based on our arts and culture, needs to be used as a tool for all of our outreach, both in the country and certainly globally. Right. You did mention one thing, I should have covered the air quality. It is a big, big problem, a big responsibility that we all have. Actually, I read a note on Delhi some time back that all the pollution in Delhi is coming from 6 sources. All 6 are manageable, but all of them have to be done concurrently for this to work. By doing one little bit here, one little bit there, it will not work. And by the way, it's not a Delhi problem alone. This is extending from Afghanistan to Myanmar. So we are part of this, but we cannot be, I'm not saying media singles us out, that's besides the point. We cannot allow ourselves to leave behind a planet of this nature for our future generations as the world is actually building right now. We have to turn this around quickly, in fact, yesterday.
Sunil Munjal, I know you advise a lot of people on what should be done and how to advise governments on what they should do. So as we come to an end of this, what would be the 2 or 3 things that you think we should be doing to accelerate the India story in 2026? As we build towards Viksit Bharat, where every step has to be planned, what do you think we should be doing in 2026?
So, one is we need to rapidly accelerate the induction of the female into all mainstream activities in India. One of the big strengths that we have, which has been turned into a weakness, is not in allowing enough women into the workforce, into decision making, into boards, and all of that. We've had to force companies to do it. I think that's one important thing. Let's open up the floodgates. Let's open up the doors everywhere. And by the way, they've demonstrated their ability to do so much better. Second is enhance the use of technology as tools. Third is the high focus on arts and culture as a mainstream activity. We need to give it the respect, the regard, and the economic importance that it deserves.
And I want to end with getting a personal advice from you for people watching this, because I can tell you 2 of the best pieces of personal advice that I have ever got in my life were both from Sunil Munjal out here. The first was, if you're doing technology, file the patents. And I listened to him and I got 2 patents in America thanks to that piece of advice that you gave me. And the second one about how you should conduct your life. I mean, you know what I'm referring to. Want to share some of that with the rest of the world?
I have chosen deliberately about 12 years ago to do things that I enjoy, preferably with people I like.
That was the advice I
Because
was referring to.
if you can do these 2 things, I don't know what heaven would be, what else it would be. And those of us who are in this uniquely privileged position where you can say yes or no to things, I think you need to use this as a tool for self-direction, for directing your life, to be more joyful, more happy, to be more available to help and support others. We live in an extremely diverse world where many people are disadvantaged, and we have the ability to do that. So I think it's a unique opportunity, and as we were said earlier, it's a one short life we have. Let's try and make the most of it and enjoy what we do.
That's the perfect piece of advice. Sunil Munjal, thank you so much for joining us on the India.
Thank you, Vikram, and I think this is a wonderful job you're doing with this. So my compliments and congratulations.
Thank you so much.